President-elect Joe Biden says he does not need President Trump's cooperation to take over as president. Biden is pushing ahead even as the president refuses to admit to defeat and continues without evidence to dispute the election results. Trump has not allowed Biden to receive a daily intelligence briefing and is withholding federal funding to facilitate the transfer of power. Meanwhile, Biden's lead over Trump in the popular vote now surpasses 5 million. And here to bring this up is Bloomberg's Anna Edgerton. Anna, what's all the impact of this?
Well, it's really hard to overstate how dangerous this is. This is not just kind of a free exercise in messaging that the president and his Republican allies are doing. This is really dangerous for the most fundamental part of our democracy, which is confidence in the elections. So if we get to Inauguration Day, when Joe Biden becomes president, and there's still half the country, almost half the country, that thinks that he was not legitimately elected, that's a very dangerous thing. So, while we are hearing from Republicans that this is just kind of, giving Trump time to accept the inevitable, that Joe Biden will be declared the eventual winner, that Trump will eventually recognize that. This kind of interim period in which doubt is being cast on the results is really dangerous. And I think it's important to recognize that, there's no path here for President Trump to win. Even the court cases that his team has put forward haven't presented any evidence, and they've been widely dismissed by judges for not having the merit that they need to go forward.
Anna, we have more foreign leaders calling to congratulate Biden than GOP senators. What is the Republican strategy here?
Yeah, it's hard to see what the end game is. And we've heard different things from different people. Senator Pat Toomey today, a Republican, said that, it does appear that Biden has won the election and will eventually become president. But I've been really surprised by their hesitancy to call Biden the president-elect. And it's not just at the level in Washington, where you have Republican senators weighing in on this. We're hearing some very strong statements from local GOP leaders, which is signaling very strongly to GOP voters that this is not something they should accept, which, like I said, is a very dangerous kind of path to go down, and one that's going to be hard for Biden to overcome.
And I want to play a clip from a news conference yesterday when Biden was asked how he can work with Republicans.
They won't even acknowledge you as president-elect.
They will. They will. Thank you all so very much.
Now, what's it going to take for Republicans to accept Trump's loss? Will they on Inauguration Day?
We'll get to December 14th, when the electors from the states will meet in Washington and cast their electoral college vote. So at that point, we will have an official president-elect. But, going up to that, there's going to be a lot of steps where, states and counties are kind of certifying their elections. Georgia, for example, has to certify its election result by November 20th. So hopefully the more final results that we get that come in, the harder it will be for Republicans to hold out. And it was interesting that you played that clip. I thought it was really remarkable because Biden has been criticized by some members of his party for being too Pollyanna-ish when he kind of looks toward future cooperation with the Republicans. He's like, I know these guys, I can work with them. He was a senator for a long time. And other Democrats are saying, this is not the same Republican Party. This is not, you're not going to get a handshake deal with Mitch McConnell. You're not going to get a honeymoon period. There isn't going to be this kind of bipartisan back and forth that used to be the foundation of making legislation. It's much more combative, and especially progressives in the Democratic Party are worried that Biden hasn't fully internalized that.
Okay, so can you give us an idea of how the election fight is playing out in the courts right now?
Yeah, for example, in Pennsylvania, the Trump campaign has alleged that there wasn't enough transparency in some of the vote counting, especially in Democrat-heavy Philadelphia. But there are state officials and also the state courts who have looked at these allegations and not found enough evidence to support the charges the Trump campaign has brought. So it's hard to see where they are going to pick up enough votes to change the outcome. There's not really a path forward for the Trump campaign. And it was interesting this week that the legal challenges kind of escalated in a step, because we had that memo from Bill Barr, the Attorney General, who instructed U.S. attorneys across the country to look into these allegations. And he kind of tried to have it both ways when he said, don't investigate any far-fetched claims, any baseless allegations. And yet he used the Department of Justice, which is a federal agency, to kind of support this feeling of uncertainty. So that was certainly a moment that caused concern among those who are watching how this impacts democratic institutions and how it impacts the way that the federal government fundamentally conducts itself.
Last quick question. As we know, Georgia's Secretary of State announced the state will conduct a full by-hand count of the presidential race ballots. How big of a step is this?
It was widely expected. There were calls for there to be a recount in Georgia. Biden only leads Trump there by 14,000 votes, which is a small margin, but one that's unlikely to be overcome in a recount. So this is a pretty heavy lift for the election officials in Georgia to conduct a hand recount of 5 million votes that were cast, and they only have until November 20th to do it. But Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, is a Republican, has been criticized by Republicans in the state of Georgia for the way he conducted the election. And he's defended himself, saying, we've had live feeds of the vote counting. We've had security cameras on the ballot boxes. I've given you updates every hour or so on how many votes to be counted. So he's really defended the way that it was run and said it was the results are unlikely to change with this recount.
Anna Edgerton, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for showing up from Washington.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.